Good afternoon, Mr. Bannon.
Hi, how you doing, Jim? Thank you very much for having me.
Kënaqësi për këtë intervistë të rrallë, e para për një media shqiptare. Në Shqipëri fatmirësisht jeni mitizuar shumë për ndikimin politik dhe mediatik në SBA. Zoti Bannon, duke pasur parasysh gjithçka po ndodh në SBA, duke filluar me ngjitjen e presidencës të Donald Trump, fakt e ashtë të quajtur bashkëpunim me Rusinë, impeachment, protestat, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, grupet e krahut djathtë, pandemia, Korona-19 dhe përgjigjet ndaj saj, gjykata e lartë, a ndodhe gjitha kjo për shkak se liberalet e kanë të pamundur të besojnë se Donald Trump e ka mundur Hillary Clinton. Apo kjo është në fakt kjo luftë është diçka më e madhe. E thonë më qartë. Nëse është kjo e fundit, cilat janë skenarët pas 3 nëntorit? Në çfarë drejtimi do të shkojë Amerika?
Yeah, it's actually a deeper issue. Remember, Hillary Clinton, the reason we won in 16 is that Hillary Clinton represented the managed decline of the United States by our elites for their own profit. And this is what Donald Trump stood against. He was a disruptor. He was anti-establishment. And that's why, at the end of the day, why he was elected president of the United States. It was working class people, including a lot of Democrats. I come from a Democratic working class blue collar family. Trump was really brought to power by working class votes and lower middle class. I mean, he represents the working class in America. And remember, the elites on Wall Street, the elites on the City of London, the elites in Davos, right, the party of Davos, international corporations, and the Chinese Communist Party, they do not want to have what's called the deplorables. Hillary Clinton called the deplorables. These are working class people. They don't want them to have a voice. So the point from the very beginning, what I call the nullification project, was to nullify Trump's entire legitimacy of his victory and his presidency. And this is not just to defeat Donald Trump, it's to destroy Donald Trump. Because in destroying Donald Trump, they think they break the rise of this populist nationalist movement in the United States. Well, they failed, and they're going to fail again on November 3rd. So this is a massively important moment in American history.
Në fakt, zoti Bannon përmendet Kinën. Ju si strateg, e ndoshta si ideolog, jeni përqendruar shumë të Kina. A është konflikti ndërmjet SBA-ve dhe Kinës vetëm ideologjik apo është diçka më e madhe se aq? Nëse është kështu, ju sa pristi të ndryshojë bota dhe rivalitetin e 30-50 vitet e ardhshme? Si do të ndikojë marrëdhëniet ndërmjet SBA-s dhe Kinës pas zgjedhjeve të 3 nëntorit në SBA?
Look, Albania is at the very heart of this. Look at what's happening with the Chinese Communist Party and what's called One Belt, One Road. You know, Albania is important because of its geostrategic position, the natural resources, and the great people of Albania. And the Chinese Communist Party understands what they're trying to do is they're trying to consolidate the Eurasian landmass. And they're trying to consolidate the Eurasian landmass with their partners, Pakistan, Iran, Turkey, and Russia. And they see Albania and the Balkans as an absolute central part because it's the land bridge between Asia and Europe, and it's also got tremendous natural resources and incredible people. So you're seeing the Chinese Communist Party is trying to make big inroads and essentially enslave the Albanian people with what's called kind of the East India Company strategy, where they bribe your elites and then they lend money to the country for infrastructure projects that benefit them, and then they foreclose on the debt and basically take control of the country's finances. So this geostrategic struggle between atheistic, materialistic communism and the alliance of liberty that the United States represents with Australia and Western Europe, Canada, India, and other nations is really playing out in Eastern Europe, and particularly in the Balkans, and specifically in Albania. So no, it's an ideological struggle because there's two different, and we've been through this so much of the 20th century. Remember, the 20th century is the bloodiest century in mankind's history. The reason is that we had this great struggle between democracy and freedom in both totalitarianism, fascism, and communism. And that's when I say totalitarianism, fascism, communism, those are just fancy terms for gangsterism. You know, these countries that are run by communists are just gangster regimes. That's what the Chinese Communist Party is. So it's going to be a massive struggle. The United States will win it. You've seen us change and kind of pivot to confront the Chinese Communist Party. I take a lot of pride in the fact that I was a part of that, not just refocusing the campaign about China in 2016, but to help refocus the U.S. government to, under President Trump, to really focus on the enemies, not China. It's not the Chinese people. The Chinese people are some of the most decent, hardworking people on earth, enslaved by the Chinese Communist Party. China is a great country. It's the Chinese Communist Party. That's our problem. And this is going to be the defining struggle of the first half of the 21st century. And Albania is going to be right in the middle of that.
Zoti Bannon flisti për komunizëm, fashizëm, regjime totalitare, në fakt sipas jush janë regjime gangsterësh, por Ballkani ka një ngjashmëri në qeverisje. Kryeministri socialist I Shqipërisë Edi Rama përkrah George Soros, Redit Clinton, liberalët në verën e vitit 2016. Ai doli në CNN dhe e quajti kandidatin e atëhershëm Donald Trump turp për civilizimin, dhe se zgjedhja e tij do të ndikonte negativisht në marrëdhëniet shqiptaro-amerikane. E megjithatë, Departamenti Amerikan I Shtetit, Ambasada e SBA-s në Tiranë e kanë mbrojtur dhe e mbrojnë në dëm të demokracisë, shtetit ligjor, stabilitetit ekonomik, madje edhe kohezionit social. Pyetja është fare konkrete dhe është një pyetje që e bën çdo shqiptar. A është Departamenti I Shtetit ende në kontrollin e Clinton dhe të Sorosit? Dhe më qartë, a ka dështuar Departamenti I Shtetit të ofrojë një agjent Trump në Ballkan?
Well, I think you see from the impeachment trial, look, Mike Pompeo, I consider a colleague and a friend, and I think he's done a terrific job. I think people like Rick Grinnell, and you see this in the Kosovo deal, have done an amazing job. But it's obvious that the entire State Department is not totally under the grips of the Trump administration. We saw this in the impeachment. Remember, the impeachment kind of came up through the national security apparatus and came up through elements of the State Department. You see how radically different what President Trump wanted to accomplish from some of the people in the State Department. Now, look, I'm not a believer in conspiracy theories, and I don't believe in the deep state. I say it's different. It's up in your face, right? There's nothing deep about it. There are no conspiracies, but there are also no coincidences. So, no, I think what I tell people, where George Soros is involved, George Soros is looking out for just two things: more profits for himself and more power for himself. That's why he puts his money to work in situations where he can make more money and he can get more power and more control. And so if George Soros is putting money into institutions, if George Soros is backing things in Albania actively, the citizens of Albania should look very hard at that, because George Soros throughout the world has a track record of benefiting George Soros and getting more power for George Soros and his cronies. So I would take a very hard look at that.
Megjithatë, zoti Bannon, është shumë e vështirë për shqiptarët të ruajnë George Sorosin, se janë të pafuqishëm përballë tij, pasi në fakt janë të pafuqishëm përballë përfaqësuesve që Departamenti Amerikan I Shtetit sjell në Tiranë. Koincidencë ose konspiracion, përfaqësuesit e Departamentit të Shtetit të Tiranë kanë mbajtur të njëjtën qëndrime që kanë mbajtur George Soros.
Well, look, I think in President Trump's defense here, we want the Albanian people to speak and to prosper and to have control of their own country. Self-reliance and self-determination. I know that President Trump is not a supporter of socialism. Trust me. I don't think we've had a president since Ronald Reagan that has been a backer of capitalism and people that believe in capitalism. But I think, particularly in the Balkans, and given what's happened and the mess he was left from the 1990s, that remember, President Trump inherited nothing but problems. All the problems the Clinton administration didn't handle, all the problems that the Bush administration left for him in Iraq and Afghanistan, the Middle East, and the worst problem at all, the rise of the Chinese Communist Party funded by Wall Street. Remember, it was the deplorables' money, the capital from the deplorables, that funded the rise of the Chinese Communist Party. It was our technology that they either stole or we just gave to them. So President Trump's the inheritor of all that. It was the managed decline of our country, that President Trump's the reason he's president. So he had to take on all of this, at the same time. I think the number one priority was with Brunel was to make sure that we got the Kosovo situation at least somehow tried to worked out so you start to get some economic prosperity into the region. So look, President Trump is a great friend of the Albanian people. I just finished talking to Albanian American community in Michigan, which is going to be central to his victory. My family was personally touched by Albanian Americans. The coach at West Point, Alma Kavachi from Trina, is one of the greatest coaches in America, recruited my daughter to West Point, trained her, made her into a fabulous, one of the top volleyball players in the country. My daughter went on from there to become a member of the 101st Airborne, an Army captain, and served in Iraq during the war. So, no, the Albanian community is very strong in America, highly thought of, and President Trump is a huge supporter. But I think what I would tell people is just give it time. There's not a bigger backer of free market capitalism than Mike Pompeo, Donald Trump, and people like Ambassador Grenell.
Zoti Bannon, ka mësuar që kryeministri shqiptar Edi Rama në të kaluarën është përpjekur disa herë, jo një herë, të kontaktoj personalisht me ju, nëpërmjet lobuzëve në Washington. E pohoni dhe nëse po, çfarë ka dalë nga kontaktet?
Well, first off, I never talk about who's trying to contact me, but I would say that most of the political leaders in the world have tried to have through their people contact me, but I don't want to disclose it. But you should assume that I don't really deal with socialists and I don't deal with communists. I'm a Catholic and believe in freedom of religion. I believe in the freedoms of capitalism, and most of my focus has been on to take down the Chinese Communist Party, which I think is the font of virtually all the evil in the world right now, because they're business partners with people like Soros. They're business partners with the party at Davos. They're business partners with all the multinational corporations and the financiers coming out of Wall Street and the City of London. So no, I don't like to disclose it, but people should assume in Albania that I'm on the side of light.
Zoti Bannon, dhe Edi Rama është një socialist dhe komunist në gjykimin tuaj?
But I think he's definitely, I wouldn't say he's a communist, he's definitely a socialist, but I believe, and I don't want to disparage him too much, but I believe he came out a while ago and talked about the virtues of communism, of Russia under the communists. I think he's talked before in the past about some of the virtues of communism in Russia and the Soviet Union previously. And he appears to be a socialist. So, I don't support socialist regimes. I don't back socialists in the United States of America. I think socialism is a very slippery slope to communism. And I think communism always ends the same way. I'm a populist. I'm from the little guy. I come from a blue-collar, working-class family in America. And I was just fortunate enough to, go in the Navy and then go to Harvard and Wall Street, work for Goldman Sachs. But I'm a believer in capitalism. I'm a believer in the freedoms that come with democracy and capitalism. And I'm a populist. I fight for the little guy. And I think the little guy gets the worst deal under socialism. And I think the little guy gets a worse deal under communism. And I think their track record is all you need to look at.
Zoti Bannon, pse duhet shqiptarët të votojnë Donald Trump?
Well, I think it's pretty straightforward. I think President Trump backs a striver's economy. The economy President Trump created really helped working class people, entrepreneurs, the lower middle class actually have rising wages, historically low unemployment, rising stock market so that their pension funds were doing better. Everything he's done and focused on is really backing working class communities and entrepreneurs. And so the Albanian American community is a combination of entrepreneurs and working class, middle class folks. And that's why President Trump is, President Trump, in addition, culturally is very conservative. He's a huge supporter of the religious communities, whether that community is our rabbis for the Jewish community, imams for the Muslim community, evangelical Christians, Catholics, the Buddhist community. I mean, President Trump's for religious freedom. And I think the Democratic Party has just been taken over by a collection of radicals. I think Antifa is a perfect example. Remember, I come from a family of Democrats. We're working class Irish Democrats, right? And the Democratic Party has left the working men. They've left, I think they've left the working man because they're going, I think, very quickly to socialism and cultural Marxism. They're very anti-religious. They're very anti-free speech. And I think that these are the backbones, these are the rights that made us the country where we are. So no, I think President Trump, when you talk to and I think you're seeing it today, I think you're seeing the Latino community, I think you're seeing a lot of African Americans, particularly working class African Americans. And I think you're seeing a very strong outpouring from the immigrant community, particularly the Albanian Americans.
Zoti Bannon, a duhet kenë frikë shqiptarët të Kosovës nga një marrëveshje definitive ndërmjet Serbisë dhe Kosovës e hartuar dhe e firmosur në zyrën e presidentit Donald Trump?
Should they fear an agreement? No, I don't think they should fear an agreement. I mean, President Trump and Ambassador Grinnell would never be party to an agreement they didn't think benefited everybody. I mean, it's one of the things about President Trump. He really weighs, being a businessman and not a politician, I think he tries to weigh all sides. And, it was pretty obvious in the United States that this accord, right, would focus on particularly economic development. None of the mainstream media wanted to talk about it. If it had been bad, if it had had any problems, they would have buried President Trump with this thing. But essentially, they just didn't even want to talk about it because they could, just like the Abraham Accords in the Persian Gulf with the UAE and Israel, anything that's beneficial that President Trump does, they don't want to talk about.
Zoti Bannon, pyetja e fundit. Pas arrestimit tënd, David Goldman u shkruajti: "Të lutem Steve, më thuaj që nuk është e vërtetë. Unë si një admirues i juaj nga Tirana, po ju them, të lutem Steve, na thuaj se nuk është e vërtetë."
Well, listen, it's total nonsense. Remember, let's go back to what I said a few minutes ago about conspiracy theories. I don't believe in conspiracy theories, but there's no coincidences. That they sent the indictment for me 4 years, almost to the day that I took over the Trump campaign. What they wanted to do is to make sure that I couldn't work in the campaign and help President Trump in the last couple of months to victory. What they missed is the fact that I've already been working on an outside group and had no interest, and they really had no need for me in the campaign. So I've been working very hard on this effort to make sure they can't steal the election for President Trump with this mail-in voting. That's been my big focus for the last couple of months. What the prosecutors failed to look at is my company had a $1 million contract to provide a whole raft of services, including helping to oversee building the wall. And we built the finest wall that's ever been built on the southern border, is the wall that we built in El Paso, Texas, right? This is just a total political hit job. This is what's happened to certain elements of the radical left. They try to, and here's the irony of it. In trying to shut me down, they've only made it bigger. They made my television show bigger. I've got more access to resources. I'm more engaged in President Trump's reelection. And here's what's killing them, is that President Trump's going to win. And when President Trump's going to win, I think you're going to see some changes to the Justice Department. I think he's very upset with what's the Justice Department. The Attorney General of the United States said, I think 2 weeks after my indictment, the Attorney General said, one of the problems you have in the Justice Department, you have these young assistant U.S. attorneys who are progressive left Democrats, and they're headhunting on President Trump's closest political ally. So this thing is complete nonsense. It's a political hit job. It's something you see that would take place in Russia, right? But it hasn't, not only has it not shut me up, it's only given me a bigger platform. This is why I'm going around the nation now with a nationwide tour to make sure people that the left does not steal the election for President Trump. So no, and if they think they're going to shut me up with some, lightweight indictment, they got another thing coming, because I'm every day in their face and supporting President Trump and making sure he can win. So I'm a fighter. You're going to take a lot more than that to shut me up.
Mr. Bannon, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Kjo pra ka qenë lidhja nga Shtetet e Bashkuara të Amerikës me Steve Bannon, ish strategu i fushatës dhe ish këshilltari i presidentit Trump në vitin 2016. Fakt një personazh që ka ndikim të jashtëzakonshëm në politikën amerikane të djathtë, por dhe në mediat amerikane. Tani do të ju ftoj të ndiqni një aktivitet që shqiptarët amerikanët kanë zhvilluar pak para kësaj interviste me Steve Bannon, një bashkëbisedim lidhur me Donald Trump. Është një aktivitet fakt mjaft interesant, ku kleri shqiptar atje dhe këtu ka bashkëbiseduar me Steve Bannon, ka dëgjuar argumentet e tij sepse duhet votojnë për presidentin Donald Trump dhe ka dëgjuar dhe pyetjet e panelit ndaj Steve Bannon. Ju siguroj që është një bashkëbisedim mjaft interesant. Ju ftoj ta ndiqni dhe pastaj bashkë do të shihemi sërish ditën e 9 në orën 20:45. Deri atëherë, natën e mirë.